Hello, Mom Elenita. I am Michael G. Fabian from BSED English 1B, and today I will discuss the following topics in Module 6, Linguistics 2. The number one question, explain the following functions of language by Michael Halliday. So A, instrumental. The instrumental function of language refers to when language is used to fulfill a need, such as requiring food, drink, or comfort. B. Regulatory. When a speaker commands, persuades, or requests something from someone else, this is known as a regulatory language function. Regulatory language controls the listener's behavior, or the speaker adopts a commanding tone. Examples include, let's go home now. You need to finish that work by tomorrow, so get on with it. Interactional. This function is how we form relationships with others as it encompasses the communicative use of language. It is how we relay our thoughts and emotions, strengthening bonds with those around us. Interactional language examples include phrases like, I love you, Mom, or thank you so much, revealing the emotions and opinions of the speaker. D. Personal. This function defines how we refer to ourselves and express our personal opinions, our identity, and our feelings. A child may communicate their opinions and emotions in a simplistic way using phrases like me, good, or me happy, as well as expressing personal opinions and emotions. The personal function of language also encompasses how we use language to learn more about our surroundings by requesting information about it. E. Heuristic. This term refers to language associated with discovery and explanation, usually in the form of questions or a running commentary. For example, a lot of children talk to themselves when they are younger. Some people still do this as adults, to explain what they are doing to themselves. This helps them to understand their actions in relation to the world around them. F. Imaginative. When children tell stories and create imaginary friends or concepts in their heads, it is an imaginative way of using language. Imaginative language usually occurs in leisure or play scenarios. Remember when you were a child playing in the playground? Did you and your friends imagine you were somewhere else, such as in a house or a spaceship? Children do this to make games more interesting. So that is imaginative is all about. Informative. Similar to heuristic and personal functions, representational language occurs when we request information. However, it differs from heuristic and personal functions, as it also refers to when we relay information. In other words, it describes the exchange of information between two or more people. For example, questions like what's that and what does that do are representational. If this question is answered, it leads to an exchange of information. Number 2, explain the following theories on the origin of language. So A, bow wow or cuckoo theory. The bow wow theory is the idea that speech arose from people imitating the sounds that things make. Bow wow, moo, ba, etc. Not likely, since very few things we talk about have characteristic sounds associated with them, and very few of our words sound anything at all like what they mean. B. Poo-poo theory. The poo-poo theory is the idea that speech comes from the automatic vocal responses to pain, fear, surprise, or other emotions. A laugh, a shriek, a gasp. But plenty of animals make these kinds of sounds too, and they didn't end up with language. C. Ding-dong theory. The ding-dong theory is the idea that speech reflects some mystical resonance or harmony connected with things in the world. E. Yo-yo theory. The yo-yo theory is the idea that speech started with the rhythmic chants and grunts people used to coordinate their physical actions when they work together. There's a pretty big difference between this kind of thing and what we do most of the time with language. F. Lala theory. The Lala theory is the idea that speech emerged from the sounds of inspired playfulness, love, poetic sensibility, and song. G. Tata theory. The Tata theory is the idea of the origin of language in the use of tongue and mouth gestures to mimic manual gestures. For example, saying Tata is like waving goodbye with your tongue. But most of the things we talk about do not have characteristic gestures associated with them, much less gestures you can imitate with the tongue and mouth. H. The divine source. The divine origin is the conjecture that human language originated as a gift from God. No scholar takes this idea seriously today, and numerous and varied explanations have been put forth to explain how human acquired language, many of which date back to the time of the Paris Band. I. The oral gesture source. It suggests that the evolution of sounds involves a connection between physical gestures and orally produced sounds. Most of our physical gestures are means of communication. Even with the ability of speech, we frequently use our hands, face, and body to express certain emotions and intentions. J. Glossogenetics. When these humans could stand on their two legs, their larynx, a speech organ behind Adam's apple in the human throat, changed in a way to allow humans to produce vowel and consonant sounds in human languages. Human language developed as a result of this evolutionary change. K. Physiological adaptation. Physiological adaptation is an internal body process to regulate and maintain homeostasis for an organism to survive in the environment in which it exists. Examples include temperature regulation, release of toxins or poisons, releasing anti-freeze proteins to avoid freezing in cold environments, and the release of nectar to attract prey. Number 3, explain the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis states that the grammatical and more verbal structure of a person's language influences how they perceive the world. It emphasizes that language either determines or influences one's thoughts. For example, different words mean various things in other languages. 4. The meanings of the following. So A. Semiotics. Semiotics is the study of sign processes, which are any activity, conduct, or process that involves signs, where a sign is defined as anything that communicates something, usually called a meaning to the sign's interpreter. B. Icon. An icon is a physical resemblance to the signified thing being represented. A photograph is a good example as it certainly resembles whatever it depicts. C. Symbol. A symbol has no resemblance between the signifier and the signified. The connection between them must be culturally learned. Numbers and alphabets are good examples. There's nothing inherent in the number 9 to indicate what it represents. It must be culturally learned. D. Index. An index shows evidence of what's being represented. A good example is using an image of smoke to indicate fire. E. Ethnopoetics. Ethnopoetics is a method of recording text versions of oral poetry or narrative performances. For example, verbal lore, that uses poetic lines, verses, and stanzas instead of prose paragraphs to capture the formal poetic performance elements which would otherwise be lost in the written text. Number 5, differentiate between American Sign Language (ASL) and Filipino Sign Language (FSL). So Asians genetically have smaller hands compared to Americans. This also holds true as regards differences in height and build. So since a Filipino hand is slightly smaller, touching all fingers on top of the thumb would not be clearly distinguished when viewed from at least 10 feet away. The hand would be mistaken from the letter O, which also touches the thumb. The solution would be detaching all the fingers from the thumb in order to distinctly see the letter E.